Dear friends, we are in a new webinar by our good friend Dr. Salman is organizing very often, every other day. So this time we have a very distinguished speaker, Dr. Atul Goel. You all know him from his great contribution to craniovertebral junction surgery. This time, since this webinars are for residents and junior neurosurgeons, this time he will tell us the radiological problems of radiologic diagnosis of craniovertebral junction problems. Yes, Dr. Atul Goel, we are listening.
Okay. Okay.
First, you must share your screen.
Okay. Salman, can you see the screen?
Yes, but maybe if you could just take it all the way and put it on slideshow.
Yeah, it's okay now.
And increase it further.
Now it is on slideshow now.
Okay, can we increase the size of the presentation as well?
Salman, this is the maximum size.
Okay, no problem. So let's start. You're looking very good. You're looking young. You can start.
Okay. So I'm going to, just a minute. I'm going to talk to you on craniovertebral junction. And I understand that I'm going to talk to young people. So I don't want to make too many, just basics of craniovertebral junction. As you all know, craniovertebral junction is an extremely complex and possibly a very dangerous subject. And if you have to treat these kind of people, you have to know absolutely well the intricacies of craniovertebral junction. Now, Salman.
Yes, Atul.
Now, if I remove my earphone, you can hear now?
Yes.
Now you can hear?
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Okay,
yes,
so I'll remove this because it is disturbing me a little bit.
Sure, sure.
So craniovertebral junction is a very complex subject. And if you are going to do it, you have to do it absolutely perfectly, because there is a possibility of giving new life to these unfortunate patients. You give new life, completely new life, and that new life they can achieve in the evening of operation. And gradually they come back to their family and come back to their normal life, and they become members of the society. On the other hand, if you create any small complication, it can be an absolute disaster. You can create a person who will say, "Doctor, please kill me." Relative will say, "Doctor, please kill the person." Means to that extent, the complications are absolutely devastating in craniovertebral junction. So if we have to do it, we have to do it properly, because there is a possibility of giving new life to these people. Craniovertebral junction is at the junction of head and neck. And as you know, craniovertebral junction is the center for stability and center for mobility of the entire spine. If you see, this is the atlas, and the transverse process of the atlas is the largest transverse process of the entire spine in relative terms. If you see the spinous process of the C2, It is the largest spinous process of the entire body. So all the rotatory movements happen in the atlas. You see this, the muscles are attached. The other thing that we all know is all the muscles are attached behind. Anteriorly, there are very few muscles. Anteriorly, there are very few muscles. All the muscles are attached behind, and they are attached to the largest transverse process and the largest spinous process. So this caters to the rotatory movement, and this caters to flexion, extension, and also to an extent rotatory movements. Occipito-atlantal joint. Occipito-atlantal joint is the most stable joint of the body, most stable. And atlantoaxial joint is the most mobile joint of the body. You see the facet of atlas is round and flat, round and flat. So it caters to circumferential movements, and also because it is flat and round, there is a possibility of instability at the craniovertebral junction at the atlantoaxial joint. So when I refer to craniovertebral junction instability, I refer to atlantoaxial instability. Occipito-atlantal instability is a very, very uncommon subject. In some high degree of trauma or in some syndromic children, occipito-atlantal. Otherwise, all craniovertebral junction instability occurs at this flat joint of atlas and axis. Atlantoaxial instability is equal to craniovertebral junction instability. And I may not be incorrect to state that craniovertebral stabilization means atlantoaxial stabilization. If you say craniovertebral junction is unstable, it means that the atlantoaxial joint is unstable, and it means that atlantoaxial fixation is necessary. You see, this is the atlas. These are the facets. This is the vertebral foramen, vertebral artery foramen. This is the magic bone of the body, the king bone of the body. King, absolutely, it is called atypical. It is different. It is the crown. It is the absolutely priceless bone of our body. It has the largest spinous process. It has an odontoid process. That is one peculiarity. Other peculiarity is, you see here, this is the superior, this is the inferior facet of C2. And this is the superior facet of C2. Can you see that? So superior facet is anterior and inferior facet is posterior. So this is a peculiarity of C2 vertebra. All the other facets are one above the other, like if this is inferior, one above the other. But this one, inferior facet is here, superior facet is here. And vertebral artery foramen is here. And odontoid process. This bone is one bone which the whole body is afraid of. And I will discuss why the whole body is afraid of this small little bone. And there are so many things that happen when this bone becomes abnormally inclined. If you hold the bone in your hand, this vertebra in your hand, you see this is a soft part of the bone. Odontoid is soft part of the bone. This is soft part of the bone. The hardest part of the bone is the facets. The facets are the hardest and the strongest part of the bone, of the vertebral segment. All the muscles attached to the C2 spinous process or anywhere in the spine work on the facets. And facet is the fulcrum of all movements of the spine. And facets is the strongest part of the spine. So I had written a smallish paper on facts about facets. So just to introduce to the young residents, they might not be aware, or they might just be aware of this article of mine, which we had written, which was published in 1994. I had written actually this article in 1988. And you will be surprised that I sent this article for publication in all the journals of the world, including our own Neurology India. And this article was rejected everywhere. Till the time in 1994, this article was published in Acta Neurochirurgica. And now you will be surprised to know that this is one of the most highly cited articles in the world of spine. The issue in this thing is, my screws are going in the hardest part of the spine, and that is the facets. So one screw I introduced in C1 and one screw I introduced in C2. And initially we had described these kind of plates. So this was my first case in the year 1988, and you can see how my screws were different at that time. My plate was different, and I used to use radio-ulnar fixation plate, which I used to cut, and that was stainless steel plate. One screw here, and this is the fusion. So over the period of time, we have got a very large experience on this kind of fusion, which is more than 2,500 cases since 1988. So over the period of 32, 33 years. And I will little bit try to discuss the technique and the various radiological issues. So since the year 1988, my technique involves opening of the joint, removal of the cartilage, and putting bone graft in the joint cavity. So these are the basic parameters in my technique since 1988. Means you have to do these three steps: open the joint, remove the cartilage, and put bone graft. So when you are going to do this technique or any technique that involves lateral masses, C2 ganglion comes in picture. So C2 ganglion, this is the C2 ganglion, which is the largest ganglion of the whole spine. And the other peculiarity of this ganglion is that it is exposed. All the other ganglions are in the intervertebral foramen, and they cannot be seen from outside. But this ganglion is exposed. So when you come from behind, you can see this ganglion. And this ganglion actually covers the atlantoaxial articulation. So if you have to expose the atlantoaxial articulation, you have to either mobilize it or you have to cut it. So in the year 1980, in my initials, we described this technique of C2 dissection. And if you carefully read this article, we had said that this small little step in the surgical technique was an absolutely revolutionary step in the treatment of atlantoaxial stabilization wherever lateral masses are being used for fixation. A window to atlantoaxial joint. The other, it looks very good from a distance, but this is quite a technique and quite a difficult technique, and one has to really learn. And you cannot say, oh, let me try. It may not be a good idea to try like that unless you are quite familiar and quite versatile and you have seen enough and done enough, you will ask me why. Why? Because the vertebral artery, you see the vertebral artery, this is the atlantoaxial articulation. The vertebral artery sometimes, not always, can actually go, just a minute, the vertebral artery can actually go inside the facet. So if you are going to introduce the screw, you can actually damage the vertebral artery. So vertebral artery anatomy is one thing which makes this technique a little bit difficult. The other thing that can make this technique difficult is there is extensive venous bleeding in this lateral gutter, and you can have real difficulty in exposing. So recently we had described this technique of mobilization of vertebral artery. I don't want to go in all these details, but in one of my articles we had mentioned that these kind of loops of vertebral artery in the craniovertebral junction are meant to facilitate rotatory and flexion movement in the craniovertebral junction. Suppose if it is not there, this artery can get stretched. So we had mentioned for the first time in the literature that vertebral artery moves in this vertebral artery foramen. And that is a very real thing, and that we have first subsequently demonstrated by various investigations. If you ask me what is the main revolution in the diagnostics, radiological diagnostics of craniovertebral junction, is these models. I'm not sure these models, 3D models, these are 3D models. And you can actually see the vertebral artery here, you can see the pedicle, and you can hold the model in your hand and you can do the operation. So these models for craniovertebral junction surgery was described by 2 years ago. Subsequently, many other authors have described it, but you can imagine this is a technological wonder. And this technological wonder was not described in America or in Japan or in some Western country, but in our countries, in our continent, and that also in my public hospital in India. So not by me, but in collaboration with our very expert radiological team, we describe these models. And these are radiological wonders. You see, this is the craniovertebral junction and this is the vertebral artery foramen. You can do 3D CT angiography and you can see by MR angiography. That is all right. But if you have a model in your hand, you can see the vertebral artery and then you can do various kinds of maneuvering and manipulations, and you can see how to enter into this facetal articulation, and then you can do the operation under absolute vision. So I consider in the radiological armamentarium of a surgeon, these 3D models have now been introduced as a complete revolution. So if you ask me what is the best strategy to introduce the screws in the C2, in the C1 it is not such a great difficult problem, but in C2 if you draw 9 quadrants like this, the medial and upper quadrant is the best. So these are upper are the best, and you have to direct your screw medially and superiorly, here like this. Now you see this medially and superiorly, this screw. So for last 50 years, our radiological investigation was only one, and that was plain radiology. So you do flexion and you do extension, and this atlantodental interval was monitored still till date. Most spine surgeons of the world are relying on one single parameter, and that parameter is atlantodental interval parameter. But of course, now the things have changed. So you do flexion and you do extension. So this is a reducible atlantoaxial dislocation. You do extension, it reduces. You do flexion, it becomes, this is an os odontoideum. You can see here os. you can see os odontoideum. In flexion, there is a big dislocation. In extension, the dislocation has reduced. Now you see this beautiful case. In extension, it is reduced. And in flexion, it is like a piston. You see, it is the atlantodental interval is not too much disturbed, but it is kind of a vertical movement of the odontoid process. And you see multiple bony fusions in this lady. So we had described this entity of vertical, mobile, reducible completely or irreducible atlantoaxial dislocation. Now you know this entity of bifid anterior and posterior arches of atlas. In this article, which was published in Neurosurgery, if you read it properly, we had said that bifid, the presence of bifid is a dynamic process. So when you do flexion, the bifid opens, and when you do extension, the bifid closes. And there is no question in my mind. And I tell you, whatever statements I'm making are not speculations. They are absolutely on the basis of, as you can imagine, 2,500 cases of just C1, C2 fixation. So on my basis of my experience, I'm giving you these statements that bifid is a dynamic process. And when you do flex extension, the facets go laterally. So we had described this lateral dislocation. So we described vertical dislocation, we described lateral dislocation. So the facets go laterally and they are in a different alignment in cases of bifid arch of atlas. Even in trauma, you see there is a trauma where the facets are, where the ring is ruptured, the facets go laterally. So we call this lateral dislocation, and you can see the facet of atlas going lateral to the facet of axis. The other kind of dislocation is rotatory dislocation. You see these children, I am sure you have seen, this is not a very common thing, but you see it once in a while. So these young children, you just tap on the head and their neck becomes twisted like this. If they take a very heavy school bag, they come back home with this kind of a twist. And there is no pain in this entity. And when you investigate, there is a rotatory atlantoaxial dislocation. One facet can go in front, one facet can go behind, and the other facet can go this side. So this is called facetal locking. Facetal locking, there was no treatment described for facetal locking. There is no treatment described till the time we introduced this concept that you can open the joint and reduce the dislocation. And you can give absolutely new life to these people. And now we have got several cases where the rotatory atlantoaxial dislocation we have reduced. And this is a real possibility. And according to my estimation, there is no other treatment for rotatory dislocation. So this is a rotatory dislocation. And if you see, there is no compression of the neural structures. These patients come with the only symptom of neck rotation. Now the question is whether you want to treat it. The second question is, yeah, but whether I can treat it. So want to do it and will be able to do it are different questions. Because when they are neurologically completely intact, and if you try some kind of a maneuvering, you can actually harm the person to a very great extent. And that will not be excused. So if you are 100% sure, yes, I can do it, only then you are allowed to even go near this kind of a problem, rotatory dislocation. But I can tell you that you can give absolutely new life to these kind of people. Otherwise, they will live with this problem and eventually they will develop number of subaxial spinal deformities. So you can reduce and you can fix. So we had introduced this technique of joint jamming technique or introduction of these kind of spacers into the fascial articulation, open the joint, remove the cartilage, and introduce these spacers. Now, of course, over the period of time, I don't use spacers in a number of cases. My indications of use of spacers is very limited and restricted. And if, of course, this is today, I'm not talking to very senior people on this subject, but maybe if Salman gives me another opportunity, I will like to discuss more intricacies about how and when and whether and the various kinds of instrumentation that is necessary. Another entity that we all know and we have heard for a very long period of time is the entity of fixed atlantoaxial dislocation. Fixed. I know many of the participants in the audience are very young people. They might not have gone through that. I must tell you, about 25 years ago, a number of entities of craniovertebral junction were considered to be fixed. And if you ask me what is my biggest contribution of my own life is, I wrote in this article in Journal of Neurosurgery, which was published as cover page, I said that nothing is fixed. And we said in this article, it is not only not fixed, it is abnormally mobile and hypermobile, and it needs to be fixed. So I hope you understand what I'm saying is, this entity, which was a very common entity, even now many people think about this entity, about fixed dislocation. So we introduced this very novel concept 20 years ago, that nothing is fixed. Open the joint, maneuver and manipulate the facets, and you can reduce the dislocation. So in flexion and in extension, it is a fixed atlantoaxial dislocation. Now if you think it is a fixed dislocation, then the only treatment is either remove this bone from here or remove this bone from here. So decompression was the treatment. And I will also, in my subsequent lecture, if Salman gives me, I will like to discuss this issue about decompression. Now this, if you do, according to my calculation, if you do transoral surgery for this entity, is an absolutely nonsense that you are doing. It is better, and believe me, I will suggest to you, if you are doing transoral, you are harming the patient, please don't do it. This is my recommendation. You should not actually follow. But this is my recommendation. Please don't do transoral surgery. I have completely abandoned transoral for removal of bone like this. There is a possibility of opening the joint, open the facet, maneuvering the facet, and then do atlantoaxial fixation after reduction. This is another case of fixed dislocation. There is a possibility of complete reduction and fixation. Salman, hello.
Yes, Atul.
Salman, how are we going time-wise and all? No problem?
Like to take another 10 minutes?
If I can, I will continue till night, if you permit. If you want me to stop, I will stop now.
No.
You have to tell me.
Let's go for another 10 minutes and then Mehmet and Tariq will take it from there and we'll ask questions.
Okay, whenever you want to stop me, you raise your hand because I cannot hear. I am not using the earphone.
Okay.
So I am removing the earphone. You raise your hand, okay?
I will raise my hand and I will get Mehmet to raise both his hands.
Okay. So the
Okay.
question of
Please go
irreducible
on.
or fixed dislocation is a big question in the subject of craniovertebral junction. No need to do transoral surgery for any craniovertebral junction anomaly where their instability is the issue. I know many of the young people in the audience will not know the controversies which completely envelop the subject of basilar invagination. And this basilar invagination also is a subject of my very great interest for a very long time. And in the year 1998, I had written this article, which is also very heavily cited in the literature. We had divided basilar invagination into two types. And you must remember in 1998, the concept was in 1998 that basilar invagination atlantoaxial joint is fixed. Atlantoaxial joint is irreducible. Did you understand what I'm saying? You please raise your hand if you have understood it. Please, every one of you, please raise your hand if you have understood what I'm saying. Please, please, please. I did not see one hand. And let me name that hand. Doctor, oh, this is, okay. So the question was, this was considered to be a fixed anomaly, fixed. So we divided this fixed anomaly on the basis of Chamberlain line. Chamberlain line is from the arch, from the palate, hard palate to the foramen, posterior border of the foramen of magnum. So this is Chamberlain line. If the odontoid process is more than 2.5 millimeter, that is called basilar invagination. If you draw a similar line, the basilar invagination is much severe here, but the compression is not there. Here there is a severe compression. So we divided this into two groups, in one where odontoid goes up and one where tonsil comes down. So this was my classification, which is very highly referred to, and you can see more than 400 and even more citations now. Because the entity was considered to be a fixed atlantoaxial dislocation, even in my own article we had described that these kind of patients need transoral decompression. And these kind of patients need foramen magnum decompression. So this is what we had described. The issue of instability was also described, but not fixation. If you can read, there is some fixation was also mentioned, but it was quite a bit of a controversy at that time, 22, 23 years ago, and this was a retrospective series of 190 cases. So basilar invagination is identified by various lines, by Chamberlain line, which goes from hard palate to the foramen magnum. There is a TT line or tuberculum sellae torcula line, Claus height index, Wackenham-Clival line. There are so many lines to identify and diagnose basilar invagination. We had also introduced this line. Actually, this is a modification of the omega angle. I drew one line along the hard palate and one line along the midpoint of C2 like this. And then I drew this angle and I called it a modified omega angle. Now comes 2004. And I introduced another classification. And here we divided basilar invagination into two groups, Group A and Group B. In Group A, we said that this is not stable. We said that this is unstable atlantoaxial joint. In the year 2004, I still said that this is fixed. This is not fixed, this is unstable, this is fixed. So we recommended fixation for this, and we recommended decompression for this. For this entity, we call group A basilar invagination. This entity we call group B basilar invagination. And we introduce a new term which is called craniovertebral junction realignment. Craniovertebral junction realignment. We introduce a new concept. The concept was this kind of basilar invagination, you can actually realign. So this is basilar invagination. Open the joint, distract the facet, and you bring the atlantoid, this realign the craniovertebral junction. This is basilar invagination. You realign the craniovertebral junction. And now I am doing these kind of operation on a very regular basis. In the year 2019, I did 250 craniovertebral fixations in 1 year. In 1 year, 250. So my numbers are actually, in this lockdown period, my hands are actually twitching, and I don't know where my patients have disappeared during this period of time, but they must be, I'm sure they must be suffering. Just a minute, let me just, I'm just connecting my, somehow.
Is there a connection problem?
Yeah, some connection problem, Mehmet. Just let me. Can you see the screen now?
Not yet. It disappeared.
हमारा screen पे. खोलो उसको, क्लिक करो. कहाँ? नहीं.
Just a minute, Mehmet. I'm trying
Yes.
to.
It came again. Came back.
ठीक है सर. इसका screen presentation.
Oh.
I don't know, something has happened.
Can you switch on your presentation? Your presentation, yeah, there it is. If you get your presentation in front.
Close this.
If you minimize
Close
this,
that.
minimize it. Please, बंद करो उसको.
Yes.
Yeah, can you see it?
Yes, now just increase, yeah, that's fine, perfect.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
fine.
okay.
Go on.
Sorry, my dear friends, for this. So I said that basilar invagination we divided into two groups. One group was where we said that this is an unstable group and this is a stable group, and we recommended craniovertebral junction realignment for this group. So basilar invagination, there is no need for transoral surgery, we said, and we can realign the craniovertebral junction. So this is another case, and this is another case. This was actually my first case in the year 2000. Means I am doing this kind of realignment for about 20 years now. The other very beautiful thing that we discussed And I think this was quite a revolutionary article of mine in the year 2009. We said that these kind of torticollis, short neck, platybasia, Klippel-Feil abnormality, C2-3 fusion, assimilation of atlas, bifid atlas, all these musculoskeletal abnormalities are reversible. And we said that all these anomalies like short neck can become long neck, twisted neck can become straight neck if you do atlantoaxial fixation. You do atlantoaxial fixation, all these abnormalities, all these alterations, I don't like to call craniovertebral anomalies. I have renamed this and I like to call them craniovertebral junction alterations, meaning thereby that these are not embryological problems. These are not congenital issues. These are secondary to an unstable atlantoaxial joint. So if you are going on the road and you find somebody with the neck twisted, you diagnose that this is an unstable person, you need to stabilize him. If you find some person with a short neck, he may be moving around. Like even if you know, we know about the cricketers, there was one cricketer in the English team who had a short neck. If he has a short neck, he may be playing cricket, but he has an unstable craniovertebral junction and he is in danger. His life is in danger. So essentially what it means that atlantoaxial joint is the mother of these kind of anomalies, and you do fixation and you can actually reverse these problems. Even I mentioned that cervical fusions are not primary embryological problems, but they are secondary to atlantoaxial instability. And you, if there is a multiple level fusion, you don't think that this is not formed and this is some embryological problem. I have to only tell you that in nature, all human beings are made normally. And whatever abnormalities happen, they happen in response to something. So these, when you see such bony fusions, don't think this is abnormal human being or something. You think about the atlantoaxial joint, which is unstable. When you see bifid, don't think it is spina bifida of the lumbar spine. It's different. But when you see bifid of arch of atlas, even if the person is running and having no symptoms, he's an unstable person. He's in danger and he should be fixed. Even my most fantastic article long time ago, I had written that syringomyelia is also natural. What we had said in this is these bone fusions are protective. They are not negative, they are positive phenomena. This also the other thing, this twisted neck is not negative. Short neck is not negative. These are positive phenomena.
Okay.
So recently
Dear
we
Atul,
introduced another classification which I am absolutely sure, and no need to be sure, but it is now convincing that there is an entity called central or axial instability, where
Dear
there
Atul,
is no
I think we
atlantodental
should,
interval disturbance, and when there is
I
no
think we
neural
should come to
compression
an
by the
end, and
odontoid
then
process,
we have many
we introduce
questions.
this new classification of central instability.
Atul,
Now you see here, the facet of atlas is in front of facet of axis. Here the atlantodental interval is increased, there is odontoid compression, the facets are like this, and there is an unstable atlant.
There are a lot of questions, Atul. Maybe it's time
And there is an
to
unstable.
Atul,
Yes,
Hello?
Atul. Yes,
Yeah.
Atul. I think there's a lot of questions online from the young people. Maybe we should give some time now for the questions.
Okay, fine. Okay, so I
Thank you.
want to hear the questions.
Yeah, thank you very much for an excellent presentation, a very clear talk on the anatomy and the pathological anatomy, if you can say. So, Mehmet, please go ahead.
Stop
Yeah,
video.
I will come to questions.
Yeah.
There are many. Please let me come to the first one. Yes. This is from Dr. Said Naderi asking, how about effect of position during surgery on the course of vertebral artery? The position and the vertebral artery, patient position.
Yeah. What I do is, I like to do, I will talk on the surgical issues maybe on some other occasion, because here basically I was talking on basic diagnostics. But vertebral artery is a very mobile structure. Vertebral artery is a very highly mobile and it has dynamic relationship. So when you do flexion, it moves. When you do rotation, it moves. When you do extension, it moves. It has a very rotatory kind of a very mobile kind of thing. So what my position is, I do under prone position, obviously, and my head is under traction, and the head is essentially in neutral position. Said Dr. Naderi, I will like to show you my surgical technique maybe as we go on in this presentation, or maybe on some other occasion.
Okay. Another one is that is perfect reduction in craniovertebral junction anomalies is the goal of surgery. In certain cases, one is not able to achieve a picture perfect reduction, but patient improves, is relieved clinically. Should one be disappointed?
No. This is a very fantastic, you know what, Mehmet? This is one very fantastic question. Very fantastic question, and I will like to answer this question. When there is a incomplete reduction, it is no problem. But when it is incomplete fixation, it is a problem. Aim of operation is stable fixation. Aim of operation is strong fixation. Realignment is all right, but the aim is a solid, strong fixation. And if you have incomplete reduction, it doesn't matter at all, zero.
Okay.
Dr. Satya again is asking to elaborate your choice of spacers.
Spacers, as I said to you, use of spacer, we described for the first time in the year 1999. And now these spacers are patented on my name actually. But still I will not say use it, because I don't use it very often. I use it in very select conditions. And actually, you know what, in my presentation, I have shown in which condition I use it, but in very rare situation where I'm not able to do solid atlantoaxial screw insertion in C1, or when the distraction I need, I can distract and reduce in some select situations. I will show you, Tariq, in my subsequent part of my lecture.
Thank you. Mehmet?
Yes. There is one question that, please can you tell me where the pedicles of C2 is? But I think you have already shown it in a very nice squaring, 9 square. And then you mentioned that medial upper corner is the best place to enter. Am I right?
That's right. But not always, Mehmet. Sometimes the vertebral artery can go even there. even till the facet. It can reach the body of C2 vertebral artery in some situations. So we have to see the radiology quite properly, and we have to preoperatively understand the vertebral artery location absolutely properly. Because you can damage the vertebral artery during surgery, and that can be a huge disaster. And I will also like to discuss with you as we go further as to how to handle vertebral artery injury. If suppose it gets injured, you see, we are human beings, and we can make very big mistakes, and we can create disasters. So if during the operation there is vertebral artery injury, then what? I will like to discuss this. And also I will like to show you, if the vertebral artery is going very high riding vertebral artery, how to handle that situation. I will like to show you in the subsequent part of my lecture. Or
Yes,
maybe
Tariq.
another lecture if Salman will allow me. Another.
Okay. Thank you. So there's another question is that if you do not want people to fix from transoral, there is an easy technique for it from posterior. One of the questions from Dr. Wasim.
See, one thing I can tell you, Dr. Wasim, craniovertebral junction is a difficult subject. Craniovertebral junction is a dangerous subject. Craniovertebral junction, you can give new life to the person. You don't go for easy techniques and suboptimal techniques. You can say, I use occipital fixation, I do laminar wires, I do subaxial fixation. You can, of course, do whatever you have to do. But if you do suboptimal fixation, and if you go for easy, you say, I use easy technique. Easy technique is good wire technique. Easy technique is occipital fixation. Easy technique is C3-4 fixation. Easy means nothing in craniovertebral junction. There is nothing easy in craniovertebral junction. It is here, yes or no. It is new life or death. So that is, Dr. Wasim, my answer to your question. I am not saying, also Dr. Wasim, I must tell you, there are occasions where you cannot do C1, C2 fixation, like there is severe bleeding in the venous plexus. There is, the joints are in very abnormal situations. Even then, I will never do any other procedure. I will do here and there, I will maneuver and somehow get there. But in that situation, if you cannot do, just cannot do, then you can use a suboptimal fixation, like you say, I use occipital fixation. I use wire fixation. I use laminar fixation. So that is my answer to your question. Here, either do it or say, don't do it. I will recommend, particularly to the young people sitting here. See, recently I don't have many people coming from Pakistan to India. But from Bangladesh, so many young people have come to my department, and they are doing on a very regular basis. I don't know what is the status in Pakistan about this technique. But if you have to do it, see, this is my recommendation. And I am saying, you don't have to listen to what I'm saying. You can have your own opinion. But if you are asking me, my opinion is suboptimal fixation is dangerous. I will not recommend it. That is my answer.
Okay. One question from Dr. Gilbert Corrier. How is Grissel syndrome related to atlantoaxial subluxation?
Yeah, there are many syndromes. There is Grissel syndrome, there is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. In pediatric children, Down syndrome is the most common associated with craniovertebral junction problem, Down syndrome. We have recently analyzed several syndromic children in pediatric age group syndrome. The one thing that I have realized, even in syndromic children, It is atlantoaxial joint which is unstable, and atlantoaxial instability is the nodal point of problem, and atlantoaxial joint is the need for treatment, fixation.
So a question from Dr. Farhad is, what if we are unable to reduce basilar invagination intra-op?
No, I said this question, I answered Tariq before,
Okay.
that if you are not able to reduce, it doesn't really matter. What matters is if you are not able to fix, if you are not able to stabilize properly. Like my 3 steps I have told you. My 3 basic steps are: 1, open the joint; 2, remove the articular cartilage; 3, introduce the bone graft in the articular cavity, and then do fixation. These are my 3 basic steps. If you are not able to do these 3 basic steps, if you are able to do basic steps, and you will not believe, Tariq, what I do is I don't even do intra-op radiology now. I don't bother about reduction or reduction of basilar invagination. I aim is do fixation. Solid.
So-
And the fixation has to be, believe me, Tariq, I work in a public hospital like you have worked all your life. And I have seen Salman's hospital, I have seen Dr. Juma's hospital. We are working with poor people basically. And there is no need to be high and mighty in these situations. When I say, I really mean it. I say, you have to do fixation. And you have to do solid fixation. There is no excuse for that. If you're not able to do fixation, like it is possible sometimes, that you're not able to do fixation, or strong fixation, then of course you have to do some other kind of fixation like occipital fixation, or use laminar screws, or I will give you subsequent lectures some other options what to do. And I will show you how to do when you are not able to do, say for instance, C2 screw. Say for instance, you are not
I think he's got stuck.
Connection has gone. Yeah, there is.
Okay, in the meantime, maybe what we will do is we will show you our next program that we have. So hopefully Atul can kick back in the meantime. So can you see all this? So we have Pablo Gonzalez from Spain. He's an anatomist and an excellent clinician, works a lot of skull-based stuff. So he's going to be talking same time at 12 o'clock on Wednesday. And he's going to be talking about clinical anatomy for skull-based lesions. So he's going to be discussing approaches, how to avoid any brain injury during these skull-based lesions. So clinical anatomy according to it. And I will just see if we can show you the program for the next week. So the program for the next week we will show here now. And it includes...
Excellent work you're doing, Salman. That's very good. Excellent.
I think what we have is after Pablo, as you can see, Paulo Pereira has got cervical spondylotic myelopathy. And this is actually not at 12 o'clock, it's going to be Saturday at 5 o'clock. So the plan is for 5 o'clock, and the idea is that Greg Cross would be the moderator from US, so he needs to be there. I don't want him sleeping while we have this talk. Then Nicolai Pieve this Friday is going to be talking about localization of lesion in spine. And then we have further people to follow for next week. Henry Shoda would be there, Hassan Syed, and Azam from US would be there as well, talking about pediatric patients evaluation and endovascular vascular specialty in neurosurgery. So all these are for residents, and hopefully we can get things going. Let's see if Atul has come back in. Can we call him?
Mehmet, do you want to give a summary yourself
Atul is coming.
to the young students?
Yeah, actually, Atul Goel has nicely described the very variable anatomy of the cryoinvertible junction. This region is quite a unique region because it provides big rotational movements of the head, and then the vertebral artery has got a feature to nicely elongate during those rotations. And the crucial is knowing the anatomy, I think.
So we've got Atul back.
We got the connection from Atul. I will ask one question. There are many questions, but one is that how do you find entering the joint anteriorly from ventral and fixation from anterior? How do you find it?
See, fixation from anterior.
And placing a spacer or distraction from anterior.
You see, I have not done, you will be surprised to know that several years ago, I had described one anterior fixation from clivus to C3 long time ago. I don't recommend it. I don't recommend it. Because of various reasons. I know some people are doing, I know some people have got a good experience in this now. I don't want to particularly go into that subject too much. But I don't do it, I don't recommend it.
Thank you.
That is my answer.
A number of people have been asking about the choice of the screws, the length of the screws, etc.
See, I have to show you all this. Maybe I will do a video presentation once your main sessions are over. Maybe some other time I will give you a video of my case and things like that.
Okay.
I think, Atul, it might be a good idea to do have a couple of interesting cases with maybe fixed and non-fixed, unstable versus stable, and can show different variation in treatment. Yes.
Salman, before you put me off, I will tell you, don't use this term fixed now.
Okay, type 1 and type 2.
Yeah.
Yes, Mehmet.
One more question. How do you manage C2 ganglion? Do you mostly cut it or save it? If you cut, where do you cut it from?
See, most important is to know that you can cut it.
I can't hear you.
Most important, yeah, you can hear now? Now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Most important is that you should know that you can cut it. That is the most important thing. And whenever you have your exposure is not to your great satisfaction, you cut it. That is the answer. You don't compromise on your exposure. Because in this operation, compromise is not possible. You compromise and you create desire. No compromise. So if your exposure is not good, if you are not able to see the C1 facet properly, if you are not able to see the region properly, then you cut the C2 ganglion. It more often happens in cases of severe basilar invagination. It happens when there is assimilation of atlas. It happens when the clivus is very acutely angled. It happens in situations of severe basilar invagination. It used to happen more often with me earlier in my experience. as I become more and more experienced in this subject, I tend to preserve the C2 ganglion more often and cut it. But whenever I need to cut it, so the ganglion is quite a large ganglion. It is about 1 centimeter size. So you cut the bulk of the ganglion, and I use sharp knife to cut the ganglion. You must remember the vertebral artery can be very closely associated with the ganglion. So when you are cutting the ganglion, you must remember to protect the vertebral artery very nicely. And once you cut the ganglion, your exposure becomes very big and very huge and panoramic, and you can do under vision this operation.
Atul, where exactly would you cut it? That's the question.
See the bulge, it is a ganglion. It starts as a bulge. So you cut just where the bulge is starting, and then you cut on other side. So you can remove it as a bulge. There are 2 rootlets of the ganglion. And one is a large bulge and one is a smaller root. So you cut both the roots. And the entire bulk has to be removed. That is the thing.
And do you need to tie it off?
No need to tie off. Very, very rarely, extremely rarely, there can be CSF coming out. And I will tell you that I have cut so many ganglions in my life. CSF has very, very rarely come into my picture. And if it comes, you have to just introduce some fat or some muscle or something in that area, or make. I don't think it is a big problem of CSF.
And what is your most common complication, or what is a complication that you may see sometimes? I know you don't have any complications, but what is a rare complication that you see?
No, you are correct that I don't have complication.
I know.
You are not wrong. But I am a human being. I am not, beyond human. And I have worked hard to achieve whatever I have worked hard. You understand? Now you will ask me about what can be the complication. Complication can be during operation. You operate and you have serious bleeding from the venous plexus. You are not able to expose. That is one thing that can happen. Second thing that can happen is there can be a vertebral artery injury that can happen. And vertebral artery injury, I have damaged, to tell you, several vertebral arteries in my career of now more than 35 years of fixation. Since 1988, I am doing this procedure. And I have damaged several times vertebral artery. And you can have a complication of vertebral artery, you can have death following surgery. You can have a patient who comes out, he's conscious, but after 6 hours, he's dead. You can have this complication. And I have in my own career complications related to vision. Like you damage the vertebral artery, post-operatively person says, my vision in one eye is gone. So that is the most disastrous complication you can have. So essentially what you have to do is you have to know vertebral artery. Essentially what you have to do is you have to do it nicely, beautifully, confidently. You have to have confidence in this operation. You cannot say, let me try and let me experiment, let me do. Of course, you have to begin that way. But there should be a confident beginning. Particularly young people who are sitting, I know there are some senior people here who are with me. But I am not, basically my answer is directed to young people. In neurosurgery, confidence is the key issue. You have to have confidence, and confidence cannot be idiotic confidence or nonsense confidence. It has to be based on very hard work. It has to be based on struggle throughout your life. It is not, neurosurgery is not one day affair that you work, okay, good. Neurosurgery is a great leveler. Today you do a beautiful case, tomorrow you have a wonderful disaster. You can never be very happy in this subject of neurosurgery. You have to walk straight and tall, but you have to look towards the ground. You have to walk with great confidence, but you must remember that you are not God. That is the thing, spirit
Thank
that
you,
we
Atul.
must have.
There was a question regarding your experience on spontaneous resolution of syrinx with persistent tonsillar herniation in a patient with asymptomatic Chiari who was not willing for surgery.
See, I have to, Salman has to give me another lecture because there is Chiari malformation is a great subject of mine. And you are saying syringomyelia is there and Chiari is there. It is asymptomatic. But should I tell you, Tariq, that when there is syringomyelia, when there is Chiari malformation, the person needs surgery. The person needs treatment, even if he's asymptomatic. He says, I am asymptomatic. Okay, you go ahead. If you say I'm small, I'm having short neck, but I am going ahead, you please go ahead. But you must remember you can have a disaster. You can have progressive symptoms. Of course, for an asymptomatic patient, nobody is going to say, okay, come for big operation. But he will develop symptoms. He will develop some symptoms. He got investigated not just because he wanted to, because some symptoms must be there. Some pain in the neck, some fingers twitching or tingling in the hands. Some symptom must be there. That is why he got MRI done. So I don't believe in this issue of asymptomatic syrinx.
Thank you. I think Salman will have to give a number of lectures to Atul in the very near future so we can tune that. Mehmet?
Mehmet?
Yes, Mehmet?
I think we have some connection problems, and the voice I hear is not very nice. I think it was a great meeting, and we can cut it here. What do you think, Tarek?
Yeah, thank you very much, Atul. It was an
Thank
excellent
you.
presentation and really a lot of questions. And
You know what, Tariq?
Yes, Atul.
Once upon a time, I was very famous in Pakistan during
still
the
are.
time when Juma and you and various people in Pakistan, I used to travel so many times. I used to come 3 times to Karachi, to Quetta, to various cities of Pakistan. But unfortunately, these political issues in our country will never get solved and my visits will never occur. So the best way to communicate is this Zoom thing. And Salman, I will be more than happy to talk on various subjects. You just don't limit me to craniovertebral junction. I will give you various lectures on skull-based tumors, on cavernous sinus, which I used to give during that time in Karachi and all. I will still like to give you when I come, when I talk to you on the next show. So Salman, my date, you have booked me for the next several shows. For the young people in Pakistan, they should know me. They should not, Pakistan should not forget me.
So you will always be with us. If you remember, you have lectured to our residents in our hospital, and you spend 2-3 hours with them. And this is like, we're talking about 8-10 years ago.
Not 8-10 years, Salman. That was more than 18 or 19 years ago.
Wow. Okay. So, and hopefully we can do that again. But what we will do is we will have another talk from you in about 10 days. If that suits you, you give me a topic, and I'm sure we can persuade Tariq and Mehmet to come as a host again and help us go through those. Wonderful listening to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you, young friends. And thank you, my dear friends.
Atul,
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I want to close the session by telling 2 things. You had 230 participants. This is the maximum amount of people I've ever seen. Second, I will read one comment about you. You are always reminding me of the great Einstein, who completely changed the fixed ideas of space and time.
Thank you so much,
You
Mehmet.
look like Einstein.
Thank you, Mehmet. Anything coming from you is most honorable and most Genuine. Thank you very much. Thank
So
you
I think
all
we will
very
have
much.
we will have you Einstein again in 10 days time. In the meantime, we will
Right.
keep busy. And thank you all the participants. It was a pleasure having you. And we will be back same time on Wednesday with Pablo Gonzalez from Spain. And you all are most welcome to join. Atul, if you want to join, it's going to be Skull-Base Anatomy. And join
Thank
us
you very
for
much.
your comments. We'd love that.
Yeah, thank you, Salman. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, cheers. Thank you, Mehmet and Tariq. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.